Well, happy World Tourism Day, everyone. I'm Greg Miller. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Responsible Travel, and I want to wish everyone a very rousing and heartfelt happy World Tourism Day. And before we forget, uh, I want to make sure I give a very hearty shout out to our very own Alex Collins on our team here at CREST, who you won't see today, but she has everything to do with the success of this important forum today. So there are also a few housekeeping items that I just wanted to comment on. In the chat, you'll notice that Alex has put those there. They are pinned to the top. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat and someone will assist you. And all housekeeping will be communicated in the chat. So again, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have people from all points on the planet, I think, with maybe the exception of Antarctica, and I'm not certain of that. From our perspective here at the Center for Responsible Travel, I just want to underscore that when we put this together, we wanted to focus on the all-important threats to a sustainable future. And here at CREST, we focused on four key ones, and of course, I think many of you do as well. One is responding to the climate crisis. The second is conserving biodiversity and cultural heritage. The third is addressing overtourism, which we're seeing now. And fourth is narrowing the wealth gap. Each of us are focused on perhaps different aspects of this, but it's critical that we maintain a threats-based approach and ensure that we have the kind of attention to the big change elements in time right now. A few points I just want to raise before we kick off. One is, and many of you have heard me say this before, it is essential that we take a holistic approach to sustainability. This approach which focuses on the natural, cultural, and spiritual elements of place. This is fundamental to our discussion and implementation of destination stewardship. Second thing I'd like everyone to be watching for is to ensure that we're thinking about and always implementing science, governance, and storytelling as key elements of destination stewardship. And finally, you'll see from our esteemed panel and keynotes today that destination stewardship is very much about a shared vision with mutual benefits, both mutual benefits and responsibilities for both public and private sector partners. When we look at, and I would like everyone to think about the following for today's forum. It's all about outcomes. What are those desired conditions for success that we want to see from taking a more destination stewardship approach? And let me just outline from my perspective what I see are some really key success indicators or outcomes, those all important conditions for success that we need to be focusing on. The first is that we focus on both sustaining local economies as well as ecosystem health. The second is that we ensure from day one in our destination stewardship journey that we promote social equity, focusing on both the access and distributions of benefits from tourism. The third, and this is key to the concept of destination stewardship, is that we work and are very intentional in strengthening stewardship values among both residents and visitors. Fourth area that I want to emphasize for success in destination stewardship is to ensure that we increase the diversity of activities, experiences, and settings within a destination stewardship context, while protecting the natural, cultural, and even spiritual resources, as I mentioned. And then finally, I think one thing we're all finding as practitioners is we're all looking for, as part of a successful destination stewardship approach, to ensure that we improve our own ability to respond and predict how visitors will evaluate, envision, and attach meaning to a destination. And I think several of our speakers will touch on one or more aspects of that today. Now, a commitment to destination stewardship is one of the best, most effective, and inclusive strategies to scale up and meet the challenges these threats present us, and to also achieve our sustainable development goals. And in the destination stewardship realm, sustainable tourism and responsible travel universe that we all live in, there is perhaps no better leader or mentor to help guide us on our stewardship journey than Jonathan Tourtellot. And I'm very happy, and it is indeed my honor to present Jonathan Tourtellot, my fellow co-founder of the Future of Tourism Coalition and kindred spirit for the power and promise of destination stewardship. So welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Greg. And I am now going to try to run this slideshow. Thank you, Alex, behind the scenes. I'm going to zoom out for a bit of perspective here and look at why we fight for distinctive sustainable destinations and how we can end up doing what Greg says we should do. I love places, distinctive places. That's why I travel, tour any vibrant destination, and from wildlife to street life, you'll find a fascinating place. Look deeper on your tour and you'll see how a place also holds the roots of the past and the seeds of its future. History reveals itself in the old structures and older tales. Even a simple wall may have a story to tell. The tapestry of a destination's future is made of threads being spun today. Children who have learned a local song, endangered birds given a safe place to nest, or ominously, a growing season that keeps getting longer. How will that change local cuisine? What new insects will arrive? These intricate interconnections make distinctive places precious. They are an invaluable library of experience. So what role does tourism have to play in the fate of a given destination? Depending on the place, the answer ranges from nearly nothing to almost everything. Think Pyongyang versus Aruba. The interaction between tourists and the place they visit depends on destination stewardship, or the lack of it. As I was preparing my talk for this forum, and I'm trying to, there we go, okay. I thought I'd search the internet to see how others have defined the term destination stewardship. And at first glance, it seems obvious. Destination means a place seen through the lens of tourism. Stewardship means taking care of that place. The definitions my Google search turned up look pretty familiar, if more detailed, such as Global Destination Stewardship Council defines it this way: a process by which, and look at the different elements here, local communities, governmental agencies, NGOs, and the tourism industry take a multi-stakeholder approach to maintaining cultural, environmental, economic, aesthetic integrity of their country, region, or town. That's a good, thorough definition. GSTC's process, excuse me, got me intrigued, and I now wondered when the term destination stewardship first appeared on the public stage. So I Googled it. 1980 to 1990, nothing. 1990 to 2000, nothing. No valid references, really. Not until 2002 was there a true Google find. Really? Not until then? And then realization dawned. The 2002 entry referenced the time when we, National Geographic Traveler, where I was then, were working with Conservation International to launch the first pass at the World Legacy Awards in Sustainable Tourism. In addition to the Heritage and Nature Travel Award categories, I had lobbied hard for a holistic award as well. After due consideration, we decided destination stewardship would be a logical name for it. grief. Were we the ones responsible for launching this term? Well, it was a surprise to me. Maybe, kind of. It didn't seem special at the time. As a term, after all, destination stewardship is a bit awkward and justified mainly by its clarity. It says what it is. Later, we use the same term for the numerical index in our annual places rated surveys, which you see there in the lower right. Now, I tell this tale not to be self-serving, but because that particular World Legacy Award revealed a problem in how destinations function. As we began to bestow awards, a funny conundrum arose with the destination stewardship category. Good candidates included a Thai island, a coastal section of England, a volcanic island in Indonesia. But if a place did an outstanding job of taking care of itself, then who should we give the award to? The government? Maybe, but sometimes it was the government causing the problem. In fact, a good stewardship accomplishment might be initiated by an NGO, a tourism business, a citizen group, or a consultant, or yes, even a government agency. But it usually involves some form of collaboration. So we had to make judgment calls because usually there was no entity in charge of destination stewardship. Lack of a collaborative structure at the destination level is why I've become a relentless advocate for creation of destination stewardship councils by whatever name, some arrangement for taking care of the ultimate tourism product, which is a place where people live. GSTC calls this their destination criterion A1. It's that important. Look at what's in the yellow type there, and you'll see the definition being echoed in this. And this is what we can call generically a destination stewardship council. This is the conceptual vision of the model that we advocate now after some interesting experiences. We advocate this kind of tripod arrangement that you see here. And that provides continuity in case the government changes or in case either of the other two quadrants change. Very important. And here is a real life example of that. The Columbia Gorge Tourism Alliance in Oregon and Washington, two-state cooperation, and it looks quite a bit like our model. And most importantly, it has at the center, it has at the center this network manager, and that is a staff position. And we found that councils that have at least one staff member are far more likely to survive. It can make a big difference. But so far, only a few destinations have developed such an approach. And then the ones that do, we try to feature in the Destination Stewardship Report, which I have been laboring on for the past 2 years. And when it comes to protective places on our planet, we win some battles, but we are losing the war, still losing the war. And that's what we're going to have to change. The marvelous aspects of great destinations are still yielding to bulldozers and mass market t-shirt shops. Landscapes once laced by sparkling streams become laced instead with ribbons of macadam. Storybook streetscapes filled to the brim with day trippers from 12-story cruise ships. Throughout too many forests, the song of the thrush yields to the braying of the chainsaw. Tourism done well can help protect these places. Done badly, it can help destroy them. Good destination stewardship can make the difference. Success requires a far better understanding of how to do it than we've developed so far. After all, the concept, at least by that name, seems to be only 20 years old. But we do make progress. Numerous destinations staggered by the pandemic are recovering with new, more responsible measures in effect. Cities are beginning to get control of disrupted short-term rentals. Indigenous peoples are beginning to take charge of tour operations. Dubrovnik and Venice are putting limits on cruise ships. Sedona is promoting leave no trace hiking. And wary of tourism, over-tourism elsewhere, the Mersing district in Malaysia is moving to manage tourism before it gets out of hand by creating a nascent Destination Stewardship Council. And Destinations International is now encouraging DMOs to become more responsive to their communities. That's a start. Here in the US and elsewhere, we must seek a way to break the common incentive-driven recipe for over-tourism, a vicious spiral that consists of DMOs paid by bed taxes, ordered by legislatures solely to market for increased tourism, yielding more bed taxes. You cannot fit infinitely growing numbers of visitors into finite spaces. We face challenges, and we do achieve some successes. So to explore them both, we have Selene Matos, Executive Director of the International Institute of Tourism Studies at George Washington University, who will now moderate our first panel, Implementing the Destinations Stewardship Model. See how hard it is to say. The Destination Stewardship Model, Case Studies from the US. Selene, take it from here.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and good day to all of you joining us from places close to home here in Washington, D.C., or far-flung places. We truly appreciate you taking time to celebrate World Tourism Day with us. As Jonathan mentioned, my name is Selene Matos, and I'm with the George Washington University's International Institute of Tourism Studies. I would like to thank CREST for the invitation to moderate this panel discussion. Destination stewardship is an area that I'm so passionate about. I served as Director of Tourism for my beloved country of Belize, and subsequently conceived and led up an initiative called the Sustainable Destinations Alliance of the Americas, which brought new tools, approaches, and technical assistance to destinations in the greater Caribbean, all focused on finding these new approaches to ensure that tourism is managed. More recently, as part of my work at GW, I've been researching how different tourism governance models are contributing to sustainability outcomes in destinations. I've also been working with a wide range of destinations on new destination management participatory planning approaches. So it's an honor to be here today. So we're here celebrating World Tourism Day, and our discussion is squarely focused on looking at what's working, what isn't in regards to destination stewardship initiatives. We've selected a few US models that are very emblematic of this year's World Tourism Day theme, which is Rethinking Tourism. These examples that we are going to be discussing today demonstrate how governments, in this case at the state level and local level, NGOs, academia, and private sector are all looking ahead and refocusing on people and our planet and putting these at the center of tourism, sharing responsibility to create a sector that's more sustainable and inclusive. So it is my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers who are directing or involved in a wide range of destination stewardship approaches and models that are helping their communities to make this transition that Jonathan has mentioned, to create greater balance among the often divergent views that stakeholder groups have in destinations, and to together tackle these very complex challenges that we are facing today in our destinations. Among them, the global climate emergency that we know is a greater threat than even the recent and still on the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'd like to introduce our speakers, and then we have many questions for them that we hope will tease out these important lessons learned so far of what's working and what isn't. And we look forward to your insights as we go along. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Dr. Brooke Hansen. Dr. Hansen is a director of the Sustainable Tourism Masters of Arts program at the University of South Florida at the Patel College of Global Sustainability and the School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. She's been a featured speaker at numerous conferences and events, including the 2021 World Food Travel Association's Food Threats Research Summit. Her current research projects involve aligning tourism with the UN SDGs, evaluating the effects of climate change on cultural heritage destinations in Florida, and sustainable tourism development in Serbia. Welcome, Dr. Hansen. We also have from the West Coast, Danielle Tehama. She brings a wealth of experience in her role as Executive Director of the Willamette Valley Visitors Association. She has worked with public land groups, state and county parks, national parks and monuments, and numerous federal agencies. Her branding strategy, creative development, and media background allow her to promote Willamette Valley's beauty and bounty in an ethically responsible and sustainable way as they navigate the Transformative Destinations program, which is focused on regenerative travel through the Transformational Travel program. So welcome, Danielle. I know you're joining us from afar, so thank you for taking time out. And we also have Ilayi Gionson. And Ilayi, please help me with your the pronunciation of your name. If I did get it right, please let me know. If not, I'd love to hear so that we are, using the right pronunciation. So would you like to please help us with that?
Sure, mahalo Seleni. Aloha, everybody. My name is Ilihia Gianson, the Public Affairs Officer at the Hawaii Tourism Authority. We have the responsibility for brand management globally and destination management locally, visitor education, all that fun stuff toward a regenerative tourism future. And behind me wiggling around there is my daughter, Kawaipo Maikai. It is 7:24 a.m. in Hawaii, so we are off to school after this discussion. Mahalo nui.
Thank you so much. And thank you for taking time out to join us and to bring all your rich experience to this conversation. Much appreciated. And so with this then, I know we have many questions for each of you. And let's dive right into the initiatives that you are spearheading. So why don't we start by first understanding what your current destination stewardship efforts are. If we could take a few minutes, please, to sort of set context, help us to understand what these are and your role in it and what some of the expected outcomes of your initiatives are. Why don't we start with Danielle?
Thank you, Seleni, and thank you for having me on this panel. So I do represent the Willamette Valley Visitors Association in the Willamette Valley in Oregon. I'm currently sitting in Athens, Greece, because I speak tomorrow for Green Destinations on a similar topic. So it's 8:25 p.m. here. But for the Valley, what we're looking at right now, what we're adopting and currently undergoing is a regenerative places program. So we've really kind of hand-selected some key people to help us spearhead initiatives and change within the region at the community level first. So we're primarily affecting change as the community sees the need. We're then implementing ways and resources, connecting and building bridges between different sectors of the tourism industry, and starting to have the conversation with our state and local agencies, our DMOs, and other stakeholders so that we can help develop and really adopt a place-based strategy. We've seen through the pandemic and then unprecedented wildfires in the Willamette Valley, we really saw that the community needed to be co-designing and co-deciding with tourism how we were affecting the evolution of this living ecosystem that is travel at the destination level. So we're 9 months into this Places program with the Transformational Travel Council and Travel Oregon. And it's been eye-opening.
Looking out my window and keeping track of things, which is a great commentary, thinking about climate change and more virulent storms and the impact on tourism. We've asked all of our tourists to leave as of yesterday along our Pinellas beaches. So Florida is a unique situation, and I lived and worked in Hawaii for 16 years. So, great to hear some mahalos and alohas. And I work in Serbia as well. And I was evaluating how each of these places, how they were addressing destination stewardship. And I'm so inspired by the DMAPs of Hawaii, the Destination Management Action Plans. I talk about them everywhere I go. And then brought the ideas back here to Florida and realized that's not how it's going to work in our state. So each state has to figure out how destination stewardship can go forward. And we have a very vigorous Keep America Beautiful affiliate program here with over 45 affiliates throughout the state of Florida. So my colleagues and I came up with the idea that we would really leverage Keep America Beautiful to put forward a statewide destination management plan. And right now we're in the pilot stages with 2 counties, Pinellas and Pasco, and both have started sustainable tourism management plans for their counties, for their destinations. So we're really at the initial stages, and we want to go through our pilots with these 2 programs, assess, and then develop a model for the state. And I will be speaking at the Keep Florida Beautiful annual conference on October 19th to start gaining momentum and stakeholder buy-in to have this be one of the ways that we can do it. Because as we know, we have so many different managers of our destinations, from Department of Environmental Protection to U.S. Fish and Wildlife, to so many different agencies at every level. Who's going to bring them all together? We are going to have to form a council, so I'm inspired about that today. But that's our idea here, is to use Keep America Beautiful as a nonprofit entity to take the lead in Florida.
That's wonderful. So already we see the different approaches, right? In the case of Willamette Valley, there's been a lot of like state level guidance from Travel Oregon and some tools being put forward and programs that Willamette Valley is a part of. And here in Brooke's case, you have sort of it starting at a more grassroots level, and hopefully having these efforts give shape to maybe a statewide direction and effort as well. So we know that Hawaii has been a very early leader in all of this. You've been looking at what residents are saying and their sentiment toward tourism for more than a decade. You have these destination-specific plans that Dr. Hansen made mention of. Could you tell us what the current sort of state is of your program? What are some of these key elements of your overall approach at the state level that are supporting destination stewardship?
This is a fantastic panel. You guys have done most of my work for me. Thank you so much. And Brooke, before I start, all of our aloha and our thoughts are with you and the folks in Florida and the East Coast as you prepare for this storm. Part of the thing about living on an island is being able to see the edge of your resources. If I look out my front door, I can see the ocean. If I look out my back door, I can see the mountain. So understanding that that's it. You want more people here, you got to fit them in there. You want to do more different things, you got to fit it in there, right? And so understanding that a place with a population of 1.5 million people in 2019 welcomed 10.4 million visitors, you really got to re-examine your relationship with the industry and how that fits, how that ecosystem of tourism fits within the larger systems of the island. So in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, we adopted a strategic plan that started to make that shift. The strategic plan that led to those destination management action plans that Brooke mentioned, and thank you for promoting those in your work. Understanding that every community is going to be different. What works in Hawaii may not necessarily work in the same way in Florida, but even within that, for example, one project we're working on to help manage traffic, illegal parking and trespassing along the road to Hana, which is a very popular but very narrow, sometimes 2-lane road on the island of Maui. You know, what happens in one valley isn't necessarily going to work in the next, in the next, in the next. So a lot of this is really granular, and you got to work together with the community to figure out what those solutions are that will work and those solutions that will stick. Because in a state capital, you can think of all the fantastic things you want, but without community buy-in, they won't stick. And so, yeah, kind of the realizations of the pandemic and its societal and economic impacts, as well as the increasing number of extreme weather events. You know, one of our most successful community stewardship projects grew out of a terrible landslide in 2018. A hurricane and its associated weather system dumped a fantastic amount of rain on the island of Kauai. Big landslide cut off the North Shore. And so the community came together and figured out, how do we manage this? And it started with a shuttle, and then there were some reservation systems, things like that. I am straying so far away from the question, but the short of it is, sometimes these things give us the opportunity to innovate beyond what we would have if we were still in our comfort zone.
But there's that guidance, right? Like, you are providing some general guidance of the destinations. They're turning to you as sort of the state entity to help them, right? Maybe even start the journey while it's place-based and it has to work for that place. There's guidance. And I think this is an important point to make at this point in the conversation, is that, you know, we've seen already how, you know, the examples here of Hawaii has helped to inform how Florida is going about it, right? So you draw these bits of approaches and models that are most relevant and appealing to the destination to formulate a very sort of specific and customized strategy for destination stewardship. So
if I could tag on to that real quick.
Sure.
You know, a lot of the work we do ends up being translating and connecting, because the community, you know, and a relatively isolated community, a rural community, still has to deal with the state airport system, the Federal Aviation Administration, state highways, county highways, all these different agencies. Many of them are adjacent to a national park. And so there are multiple jurisdictions. So absolutely, we try to play a role in convening and facilitating conversations. You know, we have our planning department that works extremely hard to put all these pieces together. And then there's the outreach to different governmental entities, as well as the industry. Sometimes industry isn't quite sure how to approach community. Community is not quite sure how to approach industry. So we play a role in convening and facilitating those conversations.
Right. And in such a fragmented landscape that is tourism, right, that role of the destination management organization as convener and facilitator, not, you know, you don't control it all, far from, right? You're bringing folks together to have that discussion. Thank you for that. So we've been joined by Sven Gonstead. Welcome, Sven. This is our fourth panelist. I have maybe a few lines to just introduce you, Sven, if that's okay, and then we'll get right into the conversation. Again, we've been talking about each of your respective destination stewardship initiatives. So please think about that, and I'd love for you to share some thoughts about how your initiative has taken shape right after I introduce you a little bit formally here. So Sven proudly pursues his passion in community planning and sustainable development in Big Bay, Michigan. He's a planner, and he served as a planner and recreation coordinator for Marquette County in Michigan. And he's been assisting the county with management of parks, natural assets, natural areas, commercially managed forest lands, and performs liaison work with various recreational trail organizations and rural governments. So welcome again. And Sven, would you like to maybe introduce your destination stewardship efforts?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah, I'm a chairman of the Big Bay Stewardship Council, and it was such a pleasure to work with the CREST team and to form this organization for this very isolated rural community, very small, and we have some wonderful assets in our community, and a big issue that we have is connecting them, connecting the people, and just making that web to create an opportunity for this community that it hasn't seen before under you know the guise of stewardship, and making sure that everything is executed in a way that's protects the character of the community. And it's been a really wonderful experience thus far.
Thank you for that, Sven. So, each of you have in your own way mentioned about, like building bridges, bringing folks together, to have these conversations, stakeholders that ordinarily maybe don't come together, breaking through these work in silos. And so clearly there's some level of sharing of responsibilities for managed tourism, either starting or on the way, depending on where your initiatives are. Can you help us to understand for your, like in the case of Hawaii, maybe you pick out one of the destinations, that you're working with, and the same for Brooke. So maybe you give us a sense for one destination that you're working in, how it is that all the different stakeholders have begun to share responsibility for destination management, and what are some of the maybe mechanisms or arrangements that are occurring to ensure that that management is occurring in the near term and hopefully medium and long term. Why don't we start with Donielle?
Sure. So because the program that we're currently undertaking is really co-designing a lot of these aspects, our partners, we have partners from agriculture and agritourism, including our wine industry, hospitality, lodging, guides, operators, outfitters, as well as our state and local agencies, all coming together to really start to develop these resources and the needs. Looking at the responsibilities that are shared, the challenge in that is finding how we can find commonality, because we are all so siloed in the work that we've always done. And tourism, if you see it as just this machine, it's always just moved forward. I think COVID put that pause with everyone. And we all started to see that it really was broken because we were really damaging our communities and our destinations. And Selene knows this about me. I'm also an enrolled tribal member from the state of Oregon. So community, culture, heritage, that sense of place and belonging is very important to me personally. But living and working in the Willamette Valley, it's full of makers and producers and artists and communities that really care about the location. So trying to get the stakeholders to convene and understand that the ultimate goal here is to protect the destination, the communities, the organizations, and the land, and be good stewards for generations to come, right? We're thinking 7 generations in the future. That is our concept as we look at regenerative travel, is how to make sure that we are talking about co-designing this, bringing everyone together, and breaking down the barriers between the various aspects and sectors of tourism to come to a common understanding that we have to act now. So if we have goals too far in the future, they're unattainable for us when it's our responsibility right now. We can revise those goals in the future for future years and future generations, but what is tangible now that we can do? Where is the thread that brings us all together? And how do we work on those steps to see the overreaching goal?
So keeping that process of convening and bringing stakeholders together, really focused on things that matter to everyone, right? Finding that common ground. And then Also having some objectives, some targets that are real, that people can get behind, of course, all working toward a longer term vision. Thank you very much.
I just want to, if I can, Selene, really quickly. So in the process that we're undertaking, obviously, we took members of our community stakeholder base, and we really kind of worked through value systems for each of these sectors. So what is a good, what are their values? What do they care about in their career or their sector of tourism or in their community? We're now in the process of creating similar surveys, and we're not just sending out surveys, we're calling people and talking to them and saying, what are your values in your community, to try to figure out what the highest and best use of these programs, and trying to figure out what the first step should be that everyone can get behind to move it forward. Talking to community members is going to be next, to ensure that we are starting from the community level, from our residents, because that sentiment, we want people to understand that it's important, and it's a good place to live, and it's a good place to work, and it's a good place to protect.
Lovely, thank you so much. Sven, how about you in terms of how stakeholders are sharing responsibility for management? I think you're on mute.
We are really fortunate in that our group is genuinely diverse. We have the Yellow Dog Watershed Preserve is a wonderful environmental group, and alongside them we have some businesses, and so thankfully I'll say, for example, the environmental group has really taken that role on of being an internal watchdog for the organization to make sure some of our assets are protected, and we're staying on track while we try to make decisions. And it's really wonderful to have their background and knowledge and their resources to be able to manage that data and input. So that's one thing. I'd say another thing is the that common thread idea, where we have defined our mission and the objectives very well, so we're able to rely on those definitions to refer back and always remind ourselves how we can fit in with those roles. And it's really been helpful to have clear definition as we proceed.
Wonderful. So here we're seeing the different types of stakeholders and the types of roles that they're playing in monitoring, right? And in also ensuring that there's effort and work occurring, right, on different fronts at the same time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that. So I guess, in both your cases, you're talking about sort of smaller destinations. Aaliyah, I guess you could pick a destination that is small as well, but larger destinations in Hawaii as well. So give us your perspective. Let us know which destination you'd like to shine a spotlight on, and help us to understand how stakeholders have begun to share responsibility for destination management.
Well, thanks for that. Great question. I want to start with this though, and Danielle, I'd be curious to hear how, with your tribal background, how that kind of fits into the industry in this way. So in Hawaiian culture, there's a very specific protocol towards asking for entry and being granted entry, right? What are the spaces to which people are being invited? And what are kind of the bounds of that invitation? When we think about destination management, it's really about managing those invitations. And for us at the Hawaii Tourism Authority, what kind of works in our favor is we have destination management as well as destination marketing, both in our area of responsibility. And so what you see over the past few years from us is a more refined invitation. We still have the mission to inspire travel demand to the Hawaiian Islands so that we can channel its economic benefits to the right places, as well as manage its impacts. And all of that kind of comes down to the invitation. How do we make the invitation? To whom do we make the invitation? And where is that invitation good? So The specific destination management action I'd want to highlight, I think, is our work on reservation systems in a lot of places, right? To sort of counter this notion that, okay, welcome, you're here, do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. There's not space for that here or anywhere really. Not to speak on behalf of other destinations, but kind of our most, one of our most heavily loved attractions is Le'ahi, or Diamond Head, that iconic hike right in the backdrop of all your pictures of Waikiki. It's very popular during sunrise, but it's a very narrow kind of dirt trail, and it doesn't have the capacity to accept as many people as would like to go hike it. And so working with our state Department of Land and Natural Resources, who stewards a lot of our natural spaces, we're able to help them implement a reservation system to manage in kind of 2-hour chunks. Okay, X many people this time, X many people this time, and use those funds to reinvest in caring for the place, staffing the place with folks who could provide that sort of stewardship and interpretive information. But it all kind of comes back to this cultural framework of the invitation. I'm sorry, I can't invite you in at this time. The other 2,000 people are invited in. You got to wait a minute. And that's something that I think the market just needs to kind of understand in these times when demand is this great for these finite resources. But yeah, one big shift we've done for over 100 years, people have talked about aloha as the Hawaiian value you need to know most when coming here. What we're trying to introduce to the conversation at this point in time is aloha's sister value, malama. Malama is to care for, to steward. It's all the things that we're talking about today. How do we make that accessible to folks who are new to the concept? We're working with lots of community organizations on developing their volunteerism opportunities so that you can come, enjoy what you're going to enjoy, but also take some time out of your trip to give back, to work shoulder by shoulder with people who care for this land every day of their lives. And perhaps, just perhaps, you can take a little bit piece of that home with you so you can malama wherever you're from. And we really feel that that can be our positive contribution, is sharing that.
Wonderful. Fusing sort of management and marketing, refining the concept of invitation and what this is, what this really means, and ensuring that who's coming also understands the values that are important to the community, and how they can really model these behaviors there on island, but then also back home, wherever they're from. These are wonderful concepts. And I guess the subsequent panel will focus a little bit more on sort of the storytelling and the fusion of management and marketing. But this is just a wonderful example of, the way that the different methods that you're using to ensure that there's better stewardship occurring. And Dr. Hansen, what about you? Give us some sense of how stakeholders in your destinations are starting to share some responsibilities for stewardship and management.
I have so many thoughts on this, and there are many different angles we can approach this, but I just wanted to follow up by saying I experienced the reservation system in Kealakekua Bay about 10 or 12 years ago. And I was diligent, and I got the reservations for my students and I, the 10 passes a day in Kealakekua, a very crowded bay on the Big Island of Hawaii, where tourists share that space with many creatures, including spinner dolphins that are trying to sleep during the day. So I got my reservations sorted out and had my passes, showed up thinking I'd have a great experience with my 9 other people kayaking Kealakekua Bay. And I showed up and there were hundreds of people there. And so that points to the fact that we also really need to onboard travelers. They have a kuleana, a responsibility as travelers. And I hate to say this, but I think American travelers are probably amongst the worst in assuming privilege I paid for this. I can go where I want and do what I want. And that's really the mentality that we're talking about that has to be changed. And if you haven't seen this, look up the funny skit by Prince Harry about how travelers need to be rated now. It was done in New Zealand, and the auditors are following Prince Harry around, giving him a rating of how he did as a traveler. Did he leave the water on when he was brushing his teeth at the hotel? Very funny, but very important to have travelers as our stakeholders too. And that's a bit of the approach we've taken here in Florida by working through Keep Pinellas Beautiful and Keep Pasco Beautiful. The point of intersection between our residents and our tourists, and also our staff people in our hotels and restaurants, are the beach cleanups. We're trying to get everyone together to Malama, our place here, especially our beaches, because we have so much plastic pollution on them. So that's how we're trying to integrate and to reach out to multiple stakeholders at once and actually have them working together. And we find that a lot of our visitors, they enjoy this. They want to engage in volunteerism. They want to help regenerate our place. We just need to provide the opportunities. And because our Keep America Beautiful affiliates focus so much on doing that kind of work, restoration, cleanups, it provides a natural venue for that. But there's a certain mix of things that I've seen here that I think have been very effective. And this is why we want to take this as a model around the state. We onboarded our chambers of commerce. So we've got in Clearwater, the beaches and downtown merged into Amplify Clearwater. That's our joint chambers of commerce. We went to them to get them on board with sustainable travel. Ocean Allies is one of our nonprofit partners. They developed a pledge to take care of this place, like the Travel Pono pledges that I show my classes from Maui County. They took it to the city of Clearwater. Gee, we'd like you to adopt this pledge. Now we got the city, now we got the chambers, now we got the nonprofits, now we got a pledge. Now we got our Keep America Beautiful affiliates developing programming to get everyone together to Malama Aina here in Florida. And so I'm seeing all these elements come together and seeing how well they work, but you really need to leverage all these different stakeholders kind of at the same time. And in our case, I don't think our statewide DMO is going to be as forward as the Hawaii Tourism Authority has been, but we can really get our local DMOs on board. So Visit St. Pete Clearwater adopted the Unwind and Be Kind campaign. It was really their first ever fully focused sustainability campaign. And we love how they phrased it, right? It's not be sustainable, pick up your trash. Unwind and be kind. Be kind to each other, be kind to your servers, be kind to the environment. Very clever campaign. And they actually brought an influencer in from TikTok that turned out to be, extremely impactful. So we've got our local DMO on board too, and we have our academic institutions. And that's really one of my roles. We consider ourselves to be some of the soft infrastructure of tourism in our state. And we have two beacons. I have the Sustainable Tourism Graduate Program at the University of South Florida, and my colleague John Bushman, he's got the undergraduate degree in Global Sustainable Tourism at Florida International University in the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism. So he's down there, I'm up here like these two beacons, trying to pull all of this together and come up with this model and do the research and get the metrics. So I work with my partners and Keep Florida Beautiful to figure out how can we collect those metrics, what metrics do we want to collect, but we might talk about metrics later. So that's how we've tried to involve what we feel are a lot of the key stakeholders. Florida is also a little bit different than Hawaii because in our resident sentiment surveys, for the most part, people in Florida are pretty welcoming of tourism. I mean, it is the backbone of our state. It's a little different in Hawaii because you have limited land and you have a strong presence of Kanaka people that need a bigger voice in this. Yes, here we have the Seminole Tribe of Florida. They do have a seat at the table in our tourism discussions, and I work directly with them. But a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different moving parts, so it keeps us busy.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're seeing how, you know, your initiatives are at different stages in a way, right? In terms of like sharing responsibilities and also grappling with some issues. It's like, okay, so, you know, the while the state level support might not be there, we need to ensure that we have sort of stronger local support, like in the case of Dr. Hansen, that we have those organizations, you know, that really will sort of continue to help coordinate efforts and continue to help convene stakeholders while everyone's sort of playing their differentiated and complementary roles. Now, you know, there's been a lot of discussion around residents, and this is important, right? Because a lot of the backlash that we've seen and the, you know, the kind of forced awakening and need for change in places has been driven by our residents in places saying we have had enough, or our lifestyle is changing sufficiently that we need to revisit. You know, we understand the importance of tourism to our economies, but, you know, we really need to do things differently. So I'd like to understand, and, you know, I'm conscious of time as well, so I'll pick off one or two of you for this question, but I'd love to understand how it is that you have treated residents. How have you brought residents? When we say we're talking about all stakeholders, we say, does this include residents? Who represents their voice, and how have you integrated them into your efforts? So maybe we start with Sven on this.
Very good. Yeah, this it's been an interesting journey in our neck of the woods, because our community has a really strong character. There's a lot of awareness that it's this might be trite, but that it is a special place, and it genuinely is. And so our residents here are, you know, they have really strong feelings that they want to protect. They don't want change, but at the same time, we need change in some respects. So the ways that we engage with them it's been an interesting journey. We've really had to be flexible and adapt, and also take into consideration, it has to be incremental. And so one thing that we've really tried to do is search out ways to connect. And we've had to go from more formal gatherings to more informal gatherings. We call them just, you know, community open forums. We do them biannually, where on the front end, it looks rather informal, but on the back end, you know, our organization is armed with specific questions to engage with the community, to get an understanding of what they want to see in the community. And that's coupled with some specific survey cards and a more formal side. But it always, for us, what has worked in our community has been to keep it as grassroots and informal of a presentation, to allow for open discussion and really get to understand what residents not only want, but what they also, you know, to also engage them and motivate them to be part of the organization. So that's one thing we do. We hold monthly meetings, and generally we might have one or, you know, a few folks join, but it's really these events, these forums. One of our keystone events, the fall festival we just had last weekend, was really the I would call it it was a microcosm of what we all are about, the stewardship idea of bringing together every aspect of our community. And that fall festival we treat as an opportunity to really engage with the residents as they begin to make the connection of what it really means to them. And then we take that opportunity with comment cards and survey questions, and the folks within our organization are canvassing the festival and trying to really understand what it is that folks, what excites them about stewardship, the Stewardship Council, and what direction the community would like to go.
Thank you so much. Excellent examples there.
Mm-hmm.
For Ilya, I guess, I'm very interested. You've been at this, or Hawaii has been working on destination stewardship for many years. You're a little bit ahead of most models in the United States. So what do you see the future trends for destination stewardship being based on your experience?
Thank you for that. At the end of the day, it is a free market, right? And the market's going to drive a lot of what industry does, and the success of industry drives a lot of decision making, for better or worse, at this point in time. So one trend that I do see that is a positive one is that the market is demanding more authenticity, right? Travelers want to see the real Hawaii. They want to see the real Florida. They want to see the real Willamette Valley, right? And so the benefit to us in destination management is that there is only one source of authenticity, and that's the community. You can't counterfeit it. You can't manufacture it. And so I think the trend is really paying attention to what community has to say. Brooke talked about it a little bit. We've been doing our resident sentiment survey continuously since 1988. So we have a really long trend of things. A couple of questions we added in the last round have to do with destination management and the importance of that. And they're the most decisive numbers on that whole survey, is how important destination management and visitor education is. And so I think the trend is that we all need to listen to our communities, is the short of it. And just to tack on a little bit, this whole idea of saying something different to community, different to visitors, today access to information is so universal that we can't do that anymore, right? We're in one big stadium with visitors in one half, industry, community. We're all in one big stadium. We can't say different things to different ends of the stadium. So if we're going to be genuine about our efforts, if we're going to be genuine about caring for our special places, as we say, malama ku'uhome, caring for our beloved home, right? If we're being genuine in that, it'll resonate with the kinds of travelers who we do want to invite to come visit us. So I think that's the trend that's on the horizon, and that's what we're working towards.
Authenticity and speaking with one voice to residents and visitors. It's those values, whatever those sort of shared values are that are important to your place, you're projecting out to visitors and to residents in just the same way, maybe through slightly different mediums, but it's the same sort of message. Wonderful, thank you. And for Dr. Hansen, so you've been working with 2 counties so far, and you intend to expand your work to the state level, to sort of help influence what's happening there. Looking beyond Florida, what do you think we need to do to inspire more destinations to embrace destination stewardship and management?
Well, I think the inspiration comes from the silver lining of the horrible global pandemic, right? We learned the role that tourism had, and there's been a credo to build back better, although a lot of us have changed that to build forward better, because we don't want to go back, we want to go forward. And so what I think we need to take this moment right now where people are still in a reflective place and move in to build forward better with the triple bottom line of people, planet, and prosperity, especially thinking about our UN Sustainable Development Goals. 11.4 is safeguarding the world's natural and cultural heritage. And now is the time to move into this space before the moment of reflection is gone, because I think it's disappearing in a few places around the world, that we want tourism to be a force for good. I work with so many organizations that are promoting this. I'm really feeling a collective will coming together between the future of tourism, bee tourism, so many different organizations. And just the other day, there was a big announcement that in October 2020, around the world. You're on mute, Selene.
My apologies here. I thought. Thank you so much. This is wonderfully said. We have something to look forward to and have the last word. If you were to consider the audience here and think about all the discussions that we've had today, and you were to think of one thing you'd want audience members to do, to act or to move forward with in terms of destination stewardship, what would be that one ask that you have of them?
I love that question, Selene. I'm going to take something out of a playbook from McMinnville, which is in Willamette Valley, and their executive director, Jeff Knapp, tells us all the time to care hard. So I would just ask everyone who's listening now to care hard, care harder, and make these things, as we realize there is awareness and will to do things differently, make it matter and make it non-negotiable.
Beautifully said. So we hope that these serve as words of inspiration to all of you out there. Thank you so much for joining us. Special thanks to Sven, Danielle, Brooke, and Aaliyah for being with us. We know that you could have been in many other places as we sort of run around and try to spread this word of destination stewardship. So we're so grateful that you chose time to be here. With this, I would now like to turn the program over to Lebawit Lily Girma, who's a travel journalist and most recently editor-at-large at Skift, to take the program forward. So Lily, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Selene. And thank you to the Center for Responsible Travel for having me here today. It's great to be among all of you on World Tourism Day. So part of my reporting at Skift over the last couple of years has actually focused a lot on destination management organizations and how their roles have expanded into stewardship, which is what that discussion was all about. So that was fascinating. Thank you all. And I've also looked as part of that, how their messaging has evolved or not since the pandemic. So what I thought I'd do here is start off with some good news of how we've seen this shift happening in the messaging in terms of more and more tourism boards embracing campaigns and content that show people-centering and nature-centering messaging and narratives. From there, I'll touch on some of the some of the challenges that we've seen in this space, what community-centered storytelling is not, how do you reach consumers today, because a lot of the different generations are on different platforms, and what is it that resonates with them. And talking a little bit about the whole status quo in the industry and destination status quo that we're still seeing, and what a rethink of tourism marketing actually means. So a little bit of context first before I get into some of the fun examples I have for you of really good stewardship and in messaging is, as we know, consumers have completely changed. Their mindsets have changed. And as a result, the wall between destinations and residents has come down, a little bit. There's a way to go, but it's coming down. And community-centered storytelling has proven to be a very effective tool in terms of educating consumers, in terms of spreading out tourism's benefits beyond the usual spots, in terms of protecting the impact on the environment, as well as bringing in folks who were previously excluded by the industry. And so conscious consumers continue to grow. This is a trend that is not going away from what we've seen. In fact, as we know, from American Express travel, 81% say they want to spend local. 7 in 10, according to Expedia, choose businesses that are inclusive and that are welcoming to them. So there's a desire to merge with the place more and more, as was mentioned on the previous panel. And folks are looking for a deeper connection to place. And that deeper connection is good news, because it leads to better choices, obviously, in a destination, and it leads to contributions to culture, nature, activities, preservation, that all positively impact place. Now, on the flip side, residents have also become a lot more vocal about the future of their destinations. And so that's actually a megatrend that we predicted at Skift for the year, and that has been unfolding. So it's very important to change the way that destinations are marketed, as well as getting buy-in from residents in terms of what you're portraying. So let's start with a few examples. And by all means, this is not all encompassing. There are many good examples out there, more and more, which is the good news. So New Zealand, if you see campaign, if you take a look at it, is very intentional in that, and they've always been ahead of the curve, but it's very intentional because it shows all of the diverse residents of New Zealand and how the unifying thread among them is the Maori culture. And the campaign, in a story that was done on Skift, they explained that the campaign was actually intentional because it was based on research showing that the Maori culture was a driver of visitor satisfaction. And it was also a very collaborative process, obviously. And next example is the Explore Uganda's rebranding and tourism campaign that I wrote about earlier this year, which was really flipped the narrative on the head in terms of the stereotype of Africa being only a safari destination and only for outsiders. And the campaign shows that it's, Ugandan speaking to other Ugandans rather than speaking to the international tourists and celebrating every aspect of the destination beyond the wildlife. The next example I have for you is Discover Puerto Rico's most recent campaign, Live Boricua, is a great example as well of intentionality. And it's focusing on, it's moving away from the typical surface landscape messaging, all things to all people kind of marketing campaign that we've seen out of island destinations, around the world. And this is a lot more specific, and it showcases local entrepreneurs, it shows cultural activities, and it invites everyone to see the place through the Boricua lens, right? See it like Puerto Ricans see it. So it's a really great effort. And the Ketchum, which is the agency of record for Discover Puerto Rico, was kind enough to share early campaign results with me just last week. And one of some of the data is here that I'm sharing with you today. And what really surprised me is that the perception improved of Puerto Rico by 59% after seeing this Live Boricua campaign. The people are also spending more, and they're also more likely to visit, 101% more likely to arrive in Puerto Rico after seeing it. So you can see that it's important to show data to support community-centered storytelling and drive it in the future. Travel Oregon, also always ahead of the curve, but what I really love about this campaign is that they focus on 3 natural elements of Oregon. So rock, water, soil, and celebrating nature, and then weaving in the diverse populations that they have in Oregon. And I use their language here, weaving in messages of environmental stewardship and direct calls to support local tourism businesses. Now, what's interesting is that we're also seeing an increase of destination stewardship messaging in social media. And social media, as you know, we have all these amazing tools now that are video, short form, a lot of different ways to tell and educate consumers. And so we've talked a lot about Hawaii so far today, so that's another shout out for them. Part of their Malama Hawaii campaign, which I also covered very early on in January 2021 for Skift. But now they have a whole series on social media that educates the consumer. And if you see the level of engagement, it's really inspiring. And they have these weekly Talk Story Tuesday series on Instagram and educates on a different aspect of the culture, of nature, and how you can contribute, etc. every Tuesday. And I do follow it. Now, let me scroll on to the next one. Yes, another shout out for Discover Puerto Rico is this use of graphics, again, in social media to educate the consumer and show them that they can go to all these different areas of the island with specific suggestions. And that, of course, helps spread out tourism's benefits, economic benefits, as well as preventing the overcrowding that we do see sometimes in San Juan. So in Old San Juan anyway. So very creative use there to guide consumers and to drive stewardship. Now, beyond social media, we're also seeing websites transforming. Travel Alaska's website transformed some months ago, where they really took a more inclusive approach and including there the native Alaskan language. As soon as you visit the website, that's what you see. That's the message. And then as you scroll, there is more content on how to experience Alaska Native culture, including a whole page of tours and experiences and who to book with. So we talk a lot about what community-centered storytelling is, but I don't think there's enough discussion about what it is not. And it's important that as our industry, particularly at the top layers of the most powerful travel companies that drive travel, we have to remember that there's a lack of diversity still in the executive C-suites. Now, a lot of times that translates into the decisions that are made. And particularly when it comes to tourism storytelling, there's a huge need to understand what it is not and what we should steer away from. So community-driven storytelling is not saviorism, any notion that tourists are here to save the communities that they're visiting, as opposed to it being a cultural exchange on equal footing. Servitude, showing people in servient positions. There's nothing wrong with being a waiter at a hotel, but I think that in the marketing, if you're consistently showing that, that's a problem, and we need to step away from that and empower residents in their role in tourism. The last one is it's not selling myths, right? So the myths, the sanitized tales of paradise, don't mix with stewardship. And a good balance with the reality is what actually today's savvy and educated consumer is looking for. And they know, like they mentioned on the previous panel, they know when you're pulling the wool over their eyes. So I like to put this quote up here for everyone to think about. A recent quote from a former conservationist and scientist, Mordecai Ogata at Skift Global Forum 2022, who said tourism's mantra of putting local peoples first is because we're guilty of putting them in the background for so long in our marketing. So we have to watch the language that we're hearing from some tourism boards and some businesses that they're actually so amazing because they're putting locals first. Well, that should have been the case in the first place. So I think that everyone's really sensitive to the use of language, use of terminology is extremely important in community-centered storytelling and marketing. So what are some of the other challenges? Well, for now, tourism boards are doing a great effort. We've seen in the last 2 years, really remarkable, but I think that it still only scratches the surface. And I've put an example here from a campaign from GLP Films, from whom you'll hear about next, one of their video campaigns on Georgia that is a lot more in-depth, a lot more specific in the way that they use certain characters to tell the story of place. And we end up wanting to go there and wanting to meet these people and learn a lot at the same time. So I think that there's definitely room for growth and room for improvement in terms of tourism marketing. Another challenge is how do you reach today's consumer? According to a survey from Nomadness Travel Tribe in 2020 with Tourism Reset, well, about almost a quarter of BIPOC travelers don't even, they make their travel decisions based on word of mouth or from group discussions, groups that they belong to, travel groups. That's how they make their decisions. And I think a good maybe 4% or less look to tourism marketing. So they're not even watching those campaigns. How do we bridge that gap? So transparency and specificity are key. Of course, the more collaborative process you have with the community in terms of creating your campaigns, the less of a problem that will be. But it's very important to be transparent in the process of storytelling and including resident voices in those stories. Consistency, it's all good to have a beautiful campaign, but if I go on the ground and the story is different, it's a problem. So there has to be a matching reality. How does the DMO shift its policies or metrics to move forward to drive stewardship through storytelling beyond just the messaging? And then, of course, there's a danger of the status quo. A lot of destinations are still today coming out of the pandemic, eager to recover economically and therefore sticking with the status quo and campaigns that are basically everything to everyone. So to wrap up, why community storytelling is important in marketing? Well, it attracts conscious consumers. It educates those who want to know about social, environmental sustainability. It drives equity in tourism by dispersing tourists to underrepresented areas and local businesses. It drives accountability on the rest of the industry. And it can showcase how a destination is rethinking tourism. That transformation that a destination is taking is also a story in and of itself that would be very appealing to consumers. So To wrap up, because I think my time is up, tourism rethink requires a complete rethink of marketing. Some of the examples I've shown you today are a great start. But tourism marketing can and should be used to forward the destination stewardship process, to center and celebrate people, place, heritage, to inspire consumers to engage in meaningful experiences. And I've said this before in a previous story of mine, but it's really time to end the tourist is king narrative. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Rob Holmes, who is the founder and chief strategist of GLP Films, who will lead a discussion next with a brilliant set of panelists about integrating community stories in destination marketing and in the creation of tourism experiences. Take it away, Rob.
Thanks, Lily. Welcome, everyone. And I really enjoyed, Lily, your session. Always nice to see you and hear your thoughts and perspectives, and honestly, great case studies from around the world. So now you're in the session on rethinking destination marketing. So leveraging this power of community-centered storytelling. And I'm here today with 5 great panelists, actually 4, I think. One person wasn't able to attend. But, and I'm really excited to get everyone's thoughts, opinions, viewpoints on everything that we're talking about, to challenge each other. That's why we're here, to help move tourism forward. And so we've got about 50 minutes, and I will stay on schedule, I promise, just to make sure that we're able to get, honestly, to the Q&A, which I think can be sometimes the most interesting. So let me just, let's just quickly go around to all the different panelists here and get everyone's quick intro. I'll start with myself. As I said, I'm Rob Holmes, founder and chief strategist of GLP Films, and we're a leading agency in sustainability storytelling. So we work with top brands to destinations through global content marketing campaigns to help them reposition and lead in what we see as really this exciting new travel era. So let's jump around. So Joanna, do you want to give just a quick intro of yourself?
Sure, of course. Thanks for inviting me to participate in this conversation today. My name is Joanna, and I'm the founder of Rooted, which is a solutions platform at the intersection of sustainable tourism, storytelling, and social impact. And my mission through Rooted is to responsibly document, support, celebrate, and share sustainable travel-related initiatives that prioritize local communities and the planet, and to help other people do the same. So I'm excited to be here with all of you today to have this important conversation.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Joanna. It's nice to see you. Johnny, do you want to go next? If you can hear me?
Yeah, sure. Hi.
Okay.
Hi, Rob. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us during this really interesting discussion about destinations. So yeah, I'm Janie. I am the CEO of Unseen Tours. I'm a social enterprise based in London, and we provide training and meaningful work opportunities for people with experience of homelessness to become tour guides, and really help create attitudinal change to improve understanding about homelessness. And we go beyond London now as well to helping other marginalized people around the world to share their stories and to engage in tourism also.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, great to have you here. And all right, Andreas.
Afternoon, everyone. Andreas Weisenborn, Research and Advocacy for Destinations International. Destinations International, the international trade association representing destination organizations globally. I'm very excited to be here on the panel today on this World Travel Day. So thank you.
Cool. All right. Last but not least, Tom.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on. So my name is Tom. I've been with Intrepid just over 7 years, and Intrepid's the global adventure tour operator. We've been a B Corp since 2018. And yeah, I'm really excited to get into this topic with you guys today.
Cool. All right. Well, again, welcome everyone. And again, so here are some of the quick rules for the next little bit here. I've got 5 key questions, actually 6 if you open it up to our general sort of wrap up at the end. We'll have about 5 minutes for each question. I'll start off with a lead person who will give their answer. And then if any of the other panelists, you guys want to add in any comments, add some value to it, feel free, or we can move on to the next question. And like I said earlier, for attendees, if you have any questions, please submit them into the chat. We will do the Q&A at the end. Again, that's sometimes my favorite part, really just to hear your questions and comments from all around the world. So let's jump in to storytelling, this sort of first topic. Andreas, you know storytelling, it's such a buzzword in the tourism industry. You're with Destinations International. You've worked in the DMO space. Really, it's such a big term when you look at destination management, when you look at sustainable tourism. But in your opinion, who should really be controlling the voice or the narrative for these destinations? What are your thoughts on this?
Certainly, I mean, from our perspective, we're looking at it from the destination organization, which we feel is the steward of the brand. When we're talking about narratives and storytelling, we're fundamentally talking about a brand, right? And it's important to remind kind of where we are in the world right now. Every community is competing at the world stage for attention, right? And the only way to get that share of attention of people, talent, currency, and whatnot is to have a brand. And so I think I don't want to diminish how important storytelling is, especially since we live in really purely illogical times. Storytelling and talking about what we do, our work and our worth through an emotional approach of a brand will cut through a lot of the noise. It comes through as a value from us. And it's important to sort of think about brand holistically, from, the funnel or, a kinetic circle here, is that it does all begin with the brand that is advanced by, a steward of the brand, like a destination organization. If you build, an authentic and inclusive, distinct brand, you inspire people to want to visit you, right? And if you get people who want to visit you, they hopefully want to come to live with you. And if you have a place where people want to live at, then you inspire work to invest there, and so on and so forth. It repeats. So I think it's just important to take stock of just how important brand is right now. I don't want to keep saying post-pandemic, but I will say the next normal. Just how important it is to keep on the gas to heighten, advance, and showcase our brand. And one other adage of it too, especially since people throw terms around like the metaverse and all these Ray Stevenson novels, is that brand is one of the few things that translates physical and virtual realms for attention. I mean, take what we're doing right now. I'm in my basement. I don't know where you guys are, but we're still working, which is a blessing. So many of these things in our society are going to be broken down more and more, but it's important to think about it, that brand can translate through all of it. And it's something I think for destination organizations, they're uniquely qualified to do as well.
Now we'll get into, I'm sure some of the others are interested in making a quick comment, but we'll get into the community side. But in your opinion, Andreas, when looking at it from the brand standpoint, you definitely made that very clear on the destination side. What role do you see? And we'll get into the community side a little bit more, but what are your quick thoughts on that sort of effective role that the community can play with that brand?
Certainly. I think it's important to point out that, a destination doesn't per se own the brand, they advance it. Everyone in the community takes part in it. And that means you have to have some level of awareness of your community. If you're a destination that has, not just necessarily tourism assets, but let's say, local colleges or other, major industries, they are part of your brand. My background, I used to work for Visit Baltimore. Part of the brand of Baltimore is Hopkins University. That's very much part of the story. So I think for a destination perspective, the community, it's a two-way, it's a two-way street of engagement. I think what we want to see happen is that all the community feels like they have a voice, an element to partake in the voicing of the brand and the narrative for a community.
Okay. Anyone have a quick comment on Andreas' comment or just this general question on the destination's narrative? Anyone else? Joanna, Janie, Tom? Again, no worries. I can move on to the next question, but just curious if anyone had any thoughts.
I think from our perspective, certainly, I mean, obviously we look at it kind of from the perspective of brand, but as a travel brand. And I'd say that for us, we're quite fortunate in a sense that we are quite a story-rich business because of our global DMC network. So, I used to be based in Peru, for example, and I could see that our customers would be in safe hands, but I also realized firsthand just how many stories were waiting to be told. And so, you know, the strength of our DMC network is that it's filled with local experts, local leaders, local staff, you know, essentially just people going about doing, you know, their normal day, which is amazing things in amazing places and serving their communities. And so for us, I think we probably have done a lot better recently in kind of getting those stories out there. And it's, you know, it's leading to not just better stories, but also more engagement with our staff, more engagement between our staff and the local communities or the local projects that we work with. And so I guess coming at it from the perspective of kind of our business and our brand is that, you know, our local people, our local experts have become kind of front and center of the stories that we're telling about destinations.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, one little example I'll give too is we worked with the Sedona Chamber of Commerce in the city of Sedona, Arizona in the US. And, you know, they're very much focused on the destination and the stewardship and really moving sustainability forward. However, they've really just in a very challenging, it's a very challenging situation that many destinations are struggling with globally, where the community has a lot of power and a lot of say. And, you know, so I think from our standpoint, from the outside, we've sort of seen that the destination, the DMO, is in some ways sort of, you know, struggled with their voice because they know what they need to put out there, but the community is very strong and vocal. And so it's been a struggle, you know, trying to give enough voice and authenticity and power to the local community. But at the same time, going to Andreas's point, you have to protect that brand and ultimately. So sometimes it's difficult. And I know a lot of destinations are really struggling with this issue when you look at the balance between community voice and the destination brand. Let's just, in order to, you know, we're going to sort of go through these rapid fire, if you guys don't mind. So let's jump to the second question, Joanna, on content. So as you know, a lot of content development work is being done, but in your opinion, what role do you see the community playing? Meaning, how do you determine, because you do a lot of work in storytelling, how do you determine the best stories to tell? And almost more importantly, who is the best person to tell that story? What's your take?
Well, I think one of the things that's really important to consider when it comes to community-focused tourism is that it's not about tourism. The focus really needs to be on the holistic well-being and care of the community, and tourism is a vehicle or a tool that can support that if and when appropriate. So the people who should be involved in that conversation, the community members who should be involved in that conversation, should be involved from the very beginning, because again, it isn't about tourism up front. It's really about the community and the people. And that means there needs to be a wide intersectional cross-section of people from the community who are involved in those conversations about sustainable development and holistic care in this space. And that includes a cross-section of genders and neighborhood representation, small business owners, and those people who have been historically underrepresented, not only in the tourism space, but also when it comes to thinking about what a healthy community looks like. So this means that people who are both in the tourism space, accommodation owners, tour guides, things like this, and those not specifically in tourism should be involved in these conversations from the very beginning. And the very beginning, pre-tourism. And by involving community stakeholders in this more holistic perspective, we create trust in the process. Community-focused tourism isn't a one and done project. It's part of this larger tourism development strategy, and going even further, again, the community's holistic strategy and goals for sustainable development and care. And so establishing those long-term relationships that invite this cross-section of people to the table means that when it comes time to creating something like content development specifically related to tourism, we aren't starting from scratch. We're not just looking at the proverbial content calendar, as it were. We're really involving people from the very beginning and creating content that is reflective of the kind of messaging we want to put out in the world. We're creating content that does include a large variety of people who live in our communities. And of course, the content creation promotion fits into then the community's wider goals for itself. And again, tourism is just the vehicle for that. There's an example out of Berlin right now where they've invited 2 representatives from the city's 12 districts who are participating in tourism planning process. And I'm not sure how they were chosen or how much voice they actually have in the planning of tourism in Berlin. But I think this is a nice example of how we can involve the average person in these conversations so that they feel represented as a community when it comes to deciding how a destination is presented, what is emphasized, who is amplified, importantly, what travelers should know about visiting. I loved some of the examples that came out of the earlier panel about using messaging as a way of extending an invitation. If we have locals who are involved in that conversation, we're not just, promoting a destination. We're thinking about the way that we are promoting that destination. And importantly, how that content is distributed. Because that content that goes out to the world, it has a very direct impact on who is attracted to the destination, what their expectations are, how they're going to interact with the people and the places they meet along the way, and importantly, how they're going to behave. So, with that cross section of people at the table, both within tourism and beyond it, people who have often had a voice and those who are historically underrepresented, and being involved in that process from the very beginning, it becomes clear what the opportunities are, who has the stories to tell, who even wants to tell those stories. There are very likely aspects of places that have maybe even never been considered from a tourism perspective before. So when we invite those voices to that table to talk about content development in the tourism space, we might find that there are neighborhoods that want to highlight certain aspects of their personality that haven't had that chance, or there might be certain businesses that haven't received the tourism spotlight before, but maybe they would like to invite more people into their space. There are a lot of great organizations or social impact initiatives that aren't exactly designed for tourism, and yet if we can find ways to invite travelers into those, they can experience and learn about destinations while supporting those destinations in a really meaningful way. And so I think that early involvement from that cross section of the community can really surface who and what should be involved with that tourism focused storytelling.
No, great comments, Joanne. I would not expect anything else but that. So thank you. This is a lengthy conversation. I totally agree in the transparency, the holistic approach, community driven. It's kind of a big transformation. We're seeing, as Lily pointed out, some really good case studies of destinations that are flipping the narrative, so to speak. Any just quick comments before I move on to the next question, just to keep us on track here? Any comments from anyone else in support of what Joanna's saying, or maybe contradicting or whatnot? Again, just wanted to have a good, quick little debate on these questions.
Well, I just would like to say that I think, for example, Janie's organization, and I know that, we'll be talking to Janie here in a moment, is a great example of the kind of people who have not been included in the tourism conversation before. And so it's fantastic to see, this kind of involvement at a event like this, where we are finally beginning to invite those variety of voices to the table.
Yep. And I would say too, I think one of the, just looking at the whole stakeholder balance and whatnot, you have a lot of, what you're talking about is really changing the narrative on it. Like I said earlier, these destinations are government organizations. As Andreas knows, they can be slow moving. So change and shifting it takes time. So I think one of the things that we definitely push in our work that we do with destinations is that collaborative point that you highlighted, really making sure that other groups and communities are really part of the process, but it does take time. It can't happen overnight. I do totally get at the end the importance of a brand. It is really important to, again, trying to look at this from being the in between, trying to look at it from both sides. It's definitely a lengthy discussion for sure, but great points, Joanna. Thank you. Let me just go to the next question here on really, and Janie, just looking at your work on the local voices. So as we all know, good intentions would, no matter what work we're doing, if it's on the content side, on the marketing side, there can be, sometimes bad outcomes when we least expect it. We just don't know. We've seen a lot of great case studies in marketing that ultimately has had a negative impact on local communities and whatnot. It's just the nature. We've seen the results of over-tourism and sort of successful marketing has had, in a way, a negative impact. But from your opinion, Janie, with Unseen Tours and the work you're doing with a very different angle, a very different perspective, how do you see how community voices can be well represented in a responsible way, not exploited, but I think more importantly, just had a seat at the table, again, just to show a new perspective coming from the community and maybe in your case, a very different community?
Thanks, Rob, and thanks also, Joanna, for setting the scene for what I'm hoping to share about the work that we're doing and about the benefit that the tourism industry can have from including marginalized and lesser heard voices in the narrative. So for us, I think the starting point is asking a few questions. Things like, who is speaking and who are they speaking for and who is speaking for them? And if a community is actually choosing how they're being portrayed through the narrative. And also whether a community is choosing the stories that's being told about them, or are they being excluded from that process of deciding who tells the stories and who chooses how those stories are told. And for us, this basically comes down to the agency and decision-making process. So if there is a tour of a community, we need to ask, is a community involved in deciding what is included and excluded from the tour? Are they the ones showing people around their community? Or is there someone else who isn't even part of the community that's doing that? For us at Unseen Tours, it's really important that we don't speak on behalf of people with experience of homelessness and marginalization who are our tour guides, but that we provide them with opportunities to share their own stories and opinions with the world through their walking tours. Can this be challenging? Yes. It's not a sanitized version of a destination or a community. And that means that there might be some inconvenient truths or uncomfortable truths that are included in the narrative. But that's what makes it authentic. And it's that authentic experience by the community and about the community that I think is sometimes missing from destinations. And so we think it's the tourism sector's role to transform these stories and these community experiences that the visitors could enjoy without taking away the agency of the community that the stories are about. And that we in the sector can provide the training in public speaking and storytelling and confidence building. We can help them with route mapping, if it's a walking tour, for example. So we can provide all of these and we can provide the visitors to these experiences, but we shouldn't really be like prescribing or dictating what they can or cannot say. And it's for that reason that we at Unseen Tours, for example, don't give a script to any of our tour guides. We help them create a script on their own terms about their own communities in a way that makes sense to them. And the other challenge, of course, is how not to make it voyeuristic, or how to make sure it's not a human safari like poverty tourism. So at Unseen Tours, we don't want you to feel sorry for our tour guides. They don't have a sob story for you. Yes, they might share their experiences, but that's done on their own terms. And they'll engage you in conversations about issues like homelessness as they help you discover hidden parts of their cities and their communities with a new perspective. And finally, we think experiences with communities should always create some sort of positive change. So we shouldn't reinforce negative stereotypes, which could further marginalize people, but instead they should provide skills and opportunities for people to do something they really enjoy, and provide a way for them to lead conversations, to educate visitors, and also create long-term attitudinal change to help the communities be understood, both locally and internationally also.
Let me just jump in. Thanks, Janie, just on this. If you had to make one comment, because again, sorry, one of my jobs here is just being the traffic person and making sure we're moving forward. But if you had to look at one thing, one aspect of change that you would love to see when looking at the importance of community voices and making sure they have a seat at the table, and really part moving forward. Again, Joanna's comments, I totally agree with. Some of this, though, it's going to take time. So what thing has to change, in your opinion, when looking at local voices in order to make sure that they are included and it is participatory and they are heard?
I think it's just giving them the agency. So if they think tourism is appropriate, then fine, go ahead, create these experiences with them, not on their behalf. But if they think tourism is not appropriate in destination, then there should be some mechanism in place to make sure that that voice is heard, and that either opportunities are presented so that things can be changed to make it appropriate for tourism to exist in a destination, or that we change the project that we have in mind, because these are communities that deserve to make changes and the decisions about their communities. And I think it's something that we forget sometimes as destinations or as tourism providers.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, again, each one of these is a whole conversation in itself. So sorry to keep it short and keep moving on. But let's go to our next topic. We've talked about content. We've talked about storytelling. But let's look at the marketing side, and welcome DOE to us here. Nice to have you here. Thank you. But so DOE, this question will go right to you, assuming you can hear me. There's a lot of destination marketing going on. It's part of tourism. You can't just shift to this big movement of destination management. You still have to market. All destinations have to market. So in your opinion, having grown up in Panama, but then now being involved on more of the government side, and speaking on some global platforms and really getting that voice out, from your opinion, what have you seen as some of the positive, but also more importantly, in this kind of constructive discussion, negative impacts of these destination marketing campaigns, and how do you balance that positivity, but with the challenges from your perspective?
For sure. Can you hear me well?
Yep. No, it's great. Thank you.
Well, I think there is a challenge always when we want to promote new experiences or products, and we're working with either indigenous communities or Afro communities or Mestizo communities, because there is a chance for the cultural heritage to be negatively influenced. But I think that it's more important that we have a chance to elevate the value of cultural heritage and the value that each person in the community have in order to provide these services and products for the tourists. And in terms of the marketing, I think that the most important thing is to have a process of consultation with the communities in which they are the ones that tell governments or marketing agencies what elements of their culture they want to be showcased. And this is important because some of these elements are being lost in Panama specifically, and the people from where I come from. I'm indigenous and I belong to the Kuna people from Panama. We are, for example, the first documented case of an indigenous culture that is about to disappear because of climate change, because we live in very small islands, and the islands where we are living are going to be underwater in the next 30 years. And for centuries, our culture has been passed down from one generation to another through traditional chants. And now in destination marketing, we are trying to use these traditional chants to teach visitors and locals also how important it is to preserve and protect nature. But for us, if we are not presenting these traditional chants and making them more mainstream, probably in 20 years, the traditional chants are not going to be there anymore, because there are very few people that still know them, and the interest of young generations in these chants it's almost none or not existent. So we have a chance now to use this heritage to promote our destination, to promote the conservation of natural and cultural heritage, and also to keep the traditional chants that otherwise will disappear. And with this destination marketing, we are not also promoting the visit of a site, but the understanding of a tradition through these traditional chants. So it is very important for us to recognize the importance of the people at the community level and to make them be part of what should be part of the destination marketing at a national level. And with this, we make sure that we are not only enhancing a product that can be based on cultural heritage, but also diminishing the negative effects that this promotion can have in the destination and in the people at the destinations.
Thank you, Dewey. Yeah, that's really good points. I think as you know, your community is not alone. There are many destinations globally that are really struggling if it's climate change. But I would say having a voice at the table is crucial. I know for us with our team, one of the biggest things that we do is it's not about producing content. It's not about creating nice videos or what have you. It's about education. It's about educating all the stakeholders involved, the local community, the government folks, to really see where tourism needs to go, where awareness needs to go. Like you said, inclusiveness, having a seat at the table and being listened to. So really a very specific example in Panama. Anyone have any comments to what Dewey said or a different angle on this question with the marketing?
Not other than just totally agree with it. I think it was some really interesting points, and obviously really, disturbing to hear about the Kuna people, having traveled to the Sandblast Islands and seen some of the amazing experiences that people can have there. It's just tragic to think that, that's one of the communities that's going to be most affected or quickest affected by climate change.
All right. Well, on that note, Tom, I'll shift it to you. We'll jump to our fifth question here.
I do think it's important.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joanna. Sorry, you got maybe there's a time delay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, one other thing that I really appreciated in his comments is that why there needs to be a wide variety of folks at the table, that cultural heritage isn't exploited. It isn't, this isn't another form of extraction when we do share the story of these places around the world. It's so easy for us to turn our lens now to community-focused tourism and for this to become a new form of exploitation and extraction. I think we need to be really careful about that. And that is why it is so important that members of the community help guide that story and the way that it is presented and shared, so that this doesn't just become another extractive form of tourism.
Agreed. And I think a number of people would agree with you. And I think we're seeing some consistency with just these individual separate points or questions that we're talking about. So let me just due to time, we're almost let me jump on to the next one. Tom, this will be to you specifically. Looking at, what are the measures of success in today's market? Obviously it's not, we've seen a big shift with a lot of destinations and a lot of companies, tour operators, whatnot, that it's not just heads and beds and bookings. Things have changed. If you look at just the momentum and the movement, it's not quantity as much now, it's more quality. Now, again, not everyone is doing that, but I think we're seeing generally some of the leadership coming out of this new era in tourism, if we called it that. But what are some of the metrics that Intrepid looks at, being the largest global operator? Obviously, your impact is very large. But what is the impact most importantly? Obviously, there's sales and bookings to see how trips do, but what are some of the local, what's almost the community ROI? Ultimately, how your measures of success will impact the destination, impact the community, and impact the traveler experience in a positive way. What do you guys look at nowadays for measures?
Great, thanks, Rob. I mean, look, crucially, and Joanna was talking to this earlier, the ultimate measure of success has to be the long-term health of the communities that we visit on our tours, right? Ultimately, when we are talking about the community, and I'll come on to kind of more of the commercially focused or customer focused kind of benefits too, because obviously as a tour operator, that's where, we do a lot of our kind of smaller measurements, but certainly when it comes to, supporting the communities and looking at what is success, it has to come down to value over volume, right? And value created for the collective, not just for the individual. So, the places that we visit, they're not just holiday destinations, they're people's homes, and so I think the destinations that truly embrace and engage and consider the happiness of residents, hosts, and travelers will ultimately create the most economic and social value for everybody. So I think those are ultimately, that has to be the ultimate measure of success. I think, bringing it back to the kind of tour operator side of things, obviously the more commercially led measurements, even the most loyal customer books once or twice a year. And so, for us, storytelling is essential for keeping those customers engaged and together, between those times that they book. And, coming back to that value piece, and especially when we are talking about trying to reduce the impact of traveling on climate change, traveling deeper and longer rather than kind of more often is obviously going to be kind of key to helping us to mitigate some of the impacts that our industry has on the planet. So, from a storytelling perspective, it really helps us to build brand loyalty, because getting customers to care about our brand, it is the difference between a one-time booker and a lifetime customer. So, we do optimize for emotions in our storytelling. When it comes to kind of the micro marketing metrics, obviously there's the kind of engagement on stories themselves, whether those stories are kind of distributed through social media, PR, partnerships, etc. What we really do see is that those stories that have, the local communities front and center, they have our local leaders telling their own stories and to the point earlier, I think it was a really good one from Janie was just around, not giving local people scripts and letting them go off script and letting them, tell those stories that they care about most. Firstly, they're more interesting. Nobody wants to hear a sales pitch all the time from a brand that you expect, to be trying to sell their tours. But also, you just get so much more authenticity that way. And so we really are finding that those stories that we are, handing over to our local experts, letting them tell the narrative and tell the stories that they want to tell are those stories which are most engaged with. And yeah, ultimately, of course, we are a profit-making business. Those engagements, those eyeballs lead to, more people viewing trips, they lead to more bookings. And so, it can work for all stakeholders. It's not something that, either has to be purpose-driven or profit-driven. I think, the purpose and that community-led approach really is driving, better commercial success for us. And I think probably the one other measurement of success that I'd talk to is, in July 2020, 2021, we actually published our first ethical marketing policy as a business. And that set out our commitment to be more inclusive in our marketing across a number of different areas, and was actually developed in partnership with a passionate group of consultants, one of which is on this call. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise, Joanna, in helping us to do that. So, in the diversity, equality, and inclusion part of that, we do have specific targets in place for creating allyship and improving, representation of traditionally underrepresented communities. And so I think that that's, an area where we have had to do better as a business. And so I think that's something that, when we are talking about, measuring that success, that has to be a part of that. The success has to also include, are we doing what we say we would do in terms of giving more people more access to be telling their own stories, telling their stories through our channels, and ultimately that has to be a measure of success as well.
Anyone have any quick comments on what Tom said? Thanks, Tom. Any different perspective, thoughts, comments?
Just to add, to be adjacent to it, I do think this is an area that particularly destinations and those who talk about destination promotion have to get better at in terms of measuring ourselves. I mean, since 9/11, tourism has been the biggest it's ever been. I mean, we're bigger than the steel industry, but yet we've had decades of very, very, very good left brain logical metrics. And I think if those were fundamentally valued, we would be the most well-funded industry in the world. That's just not the case. I think where we need to lean more into is articulating, when we do a good job telling a story, telling a brand, the ripple effects. I think right now we're living in sort of what I think the greatest currency in the world is talent acquisition. I think when we do a good job telling our story, there's many other unusual suspects who benefit from our work. I think one of the big winners of 2020 and, is I think real estate agents, right? What's the first thing they tell you when you want to look to buy a home? They say, oh, this is a wonderful community. They don't say anymore, this has got 2 bedrooms and a bath and that kind of stuff. I think that's the kind of stories we need to lean into more of showing, how tourism and destination promotion provide these other ancillary effects that feed into some sort of destination promotion, community index, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, no, I mean, this, and like I said earlier, there are a lot of destinations that have just literally jumped back to the old ways of marketing. We all know that. We've all seen it out there. And I think what I appreciate is just the bar is really rising, and there's another destination popping up with another approach to look at tourism. And that's what I think is exciting in this era. And I personally too see a lot of positives. I mean, your point, Andreas, on the importance of community, the importance of nature. I mean, we all know it being in the tourism sector, but boy, the outdoors has gotten crushed. There's obviously negative issues associated with that. But I think more importantly, just this appreciation of community, this appreciation of, Dewey, your comment on culture and community and people wanting to give back when they go and have a positive impact. No, that's not all travelers, but there's a very strong lot of data now backing it up on just this new traveler, and things have really changed. I think the average traveler nowadays is really looking at tourism very differently in an exciting way. Well, let me, again, all of these, talking about the metrics part is such a huge issue, this metrics of success. So thanks, Tom, answering that. But let me just jump to this last question, because our Q&A time, which I promised, is very quickly decreasing. So if each of you don't mind, and I will apologize in advance to keep it somewhat short, just because of our limited time, and I'd love to be able to answer 1 or 2 questions, because I see a bunch have come through. But tourism is back. Some of it's been used in marketing that's going on right now. Travel is back. But how do each of you, from your respective opinions, either personally or through the organizations you're involved with, how do you see that quick, again, very high level, we can't get into this too far, but have we done it right in where we're at in 2022? If we're looking at this new travel era, what's your quick take on it? Have we done it right? If not, or are we still spinning our wheels? Janie, do you want to just kick off your quick thoughts on where we are 2022? Your thoughts?
So first, I think one benefit that the pandemic had brought was a curiosity and willingness to explore places closer to home, so more staycationing. And through that, you have a new appreciation of what's already on your doorstep. But within that, there's also, like, we're still questioning whether there's enough emphasis to promote something that's not the typical and the most heard narrative within a place. And if there's enough appetite for alternative stories to be shared within a place just at your doorstep. So I guess we think that there is an increased appetite from some tourists, but not enough effort by destination tourism board level organizations. And we hope that this will be given more support in the coming months and years, because this is where we're still not where we wish we were in 2022.
Okay, Andreas, quick thought. You mentioned community just a second ago. Any other quick comment on where we're at 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to acknowledge it's not just the pandemic we went through, but also what happened in Minneapolis in 2020, January 6th, an election. Our communities have been through a lot. So I don't necessarily look at it as right or wrong. I think one thing that happened, though, was since we had such a massive apex societal shift, that I think work that tourism, destination promotion, destinations were already doing, I think that would have been on a timeline that would have taken 6 to 10 years, got compressed to less than 2. I'm finally starting to see, destinations and or tourism at the table for conversations they never would have been involved with before. Big societal issues that I think is exciting. So I look at it from a perspective of positivity. I think there's always going to be tremendous work to be done, but I think we were able to leapfrog in a way that would not have happened had the pandemic and other major societal events not occurred.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of pivoting and a lot of transformation. And I agree. I'm definitely very positive on where things have come. Yes, there's been some definite hardships, no question. But I think just big picture, looking at the industry, I think some of these good changes that happened were a good slap in the face for a lot of brands and a lot of destinations of, okay, I think we need to change how we're doing because the work, tourism does have an impact. Joanna, any quick last thought?
Yeah, so I think that so many individuals that work in our space, so many companies mean well, but that we're trying to disrupt a very deep, problematic industry, one person and one organization at a time. And what the result has been a lot of kind of disjointed, unconnected actions. What we really need are deep systemic changes to dismantle the way that the entire tourism industry has operated, and therefore the narrative that has shaped around that. The truth is that we're still very much operating within a deeply flawed capitalistic and extractive system. And while I have a lot of hope about where we can go as an industry in the future, I feel like we're not seeing enough action and commitment by the big players in our space, the governmental bodies, the associations, the big mainstream travel brands, to create that truly drastic shift that we need in order to truly move the needle forward. So I have hope, and I think we're making progress, but I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, I would echo that, Joanna, very much so. And I think my angle on it, or our angle on it, is that we got to celebrate the leaders, the pioneers, the people are really making good change, because of some people doing some really good work. We all know of destinations, governments that are doing some good work. So it's not everyone. There's still a lot of followers out there, or people that aren't even listening. So I think my 2 cents is just really let's celebrate the good ones, and then hope that everyone else moves along because they see that the results of that leadership. So Dewey, any quick last comment on where we're at?
I think that in general, for example, in Panama and the region, we are seeing more representation of indigenous people at a national level, at governmental levels, and also in enterprises. Now we are not just the ones that dance in order to show our culture to visitors, but we are also being part of the tourism chain not only being the providers of services, but also being more involved in the tourism management. And in Panama, at least, we have been working a lot to empower the community, so they are the ones creating and developing and commercializing the experiences and products, and giving that space for the communities to develop themselves and to have an enterprise mindset is very important in order to achieve the goals that we are setting up.
Great. No, thank you again for your perspective. A lot of change and transformation going on in Panama, as you know. So it's exciting to see that leadership too. But as you just said, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Tom, any last word for you?
I was just going to say, really, in my opinion, unfortunately, as an industry as a whole, we're not doing enough quickly enough to change as a result of the pandemic and the other issues we've been facing, that we've just been talking about. However, I do think that we are seeing that those organizations that are prioritizing creating shared value for all of their stakeholders are getting a larger percentage of airtime and are therefore becoming more influential. But to Joanna's point, it needs to be bigger than that. Businesses are, or DMOs or destinations are kind of choosing to do the right thing, some quicker than others, some not at all. But ultimately, there needs to be far more stringent, regulation guidelines for all businesses and all DMOs and all destinations to be, moving in a more progressive direction a lot more quicker than we are.
Agreed. Well, we can't solve everything on one day. So thanks, Tom. But I think more importantly, thank you everyone for your time today. I wish we could have gone into each one of these topics. They all deserve a more lengthy discussion. But unfortunately, I did get the hook. So we won't be able to do Q&A. I really apologize because I know I pitched that heavily in the beginning. But please send your questions, and I'm sure there will be some follow-up with CREST. I'm sure, because I have seen a lot of questions coming through, really good questions, taking this conversation to the next level. So my apologies, but I didn't want to cut people off too much. So, but again, thank you to everyone. Thank you, Andreas, Janie, Joanna, Dewey, Tom, for your time today. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and I will pass things on right now. Next up is Andrea Pinabel, the CREST board chair. She'll be presenting the 4th annual Martha Honey Legacy and Responsible Travel Award. So thank you again, everyone.
Thanks, Rob, so much. And good afternoon, everyone. I am so happy to be here with you today to present this year's Martha Honey Legacy and Responsible Travel Award. I know it's a mouthful. This award was created in 2019 in honor of the longtime CREST founder and executive director Martha Honey. It is intended to honor an individual who has dedicated his or her career to furthering the practices and principles of responsible travel. Through a rigorous and public process, the CREST Board of Directors is thrilled to select, drumroll, Jonathan Tourtellot, Destination Stewardship Center's founder and executive director, as our 2022 Martha Honey Legacy and Responsible Travel Award recipient. And if we were all together, we would pause for applause. So I'm just going to give you my own applause. And Jonathan will join us here in just a minute. Jonathan was amongst a pool of esteemed and highly qualified candidates, but what really set him apart was his relentless and almost dogged commitment to destination stewardship throughout his multi-decade career. One of his nominators summarized it best. Jonathan was talking about responsible travel and stewardship before the industry had terminology to talk about it. And we heard a little bit about that from Jonathan this morning, or earlier in the forum. He personifies sustainable and responsible tourism. As the founder of the National Geographic Center for Sustainable Destinations, he brought this concept into the mainstream. He coined the term geotourism, which is defined as tourism that sustains a geographic character of place through its environment, its culture, its heritage, aesthetics, and well-being of its residents, recognizing that sustainable tourism has multi and many facets. When the Center for Sustainable Destinations lost funding from National Geographic, Jonathan didn't skip a beat. He transitioned the work from the center to the Destination Stewardship Center, which he also founded. He has made this his life's work to spread knowledge and guidance of destination stewardship. Jonathan, we are so honored to award this year's Martha Honey Legacy and Responsible Travel Award to you, our friend and Destination Stewardship's leading ambassador. Congratulations.
Hello. I'm having a little connectivity problem here, so wave your hand if you can't hear me. But thank you very much, Andrea. And yes, relentless, that's me. But I much appreciate it. I'm going to talk slow in case the connectivity keeps going. But this is a wonderful surprise and very much appreciated. I must admit there were times in the depths of the pandemic when I found myself wondering, why am I laboring away in what is technically my retirement over the computer on things like the Destination Stewardship Report, and wondering, who gives a damn? Well, evidently some people do. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. It makes a big difference. This award is for a lasting legacy. And when I did my little excursion into the past to look for the roots of destination stewardship, I was appalled at how many web pages I remember were gone. And for that reason, I'm now working on the beginnings of a book I've been postponing for 10 years. I'm being assisted by Samantha Hogesson-Bray, who many of you know when she was general manager at CREST, and she is my muse with a 6-gun. Every 2 weeks, Samantha touches base with me to see how much have I done on the book, and it works. I actually do get things done. And for her, I am very appreciative, and of course for all of you for this award. And what I am hoping is that from all the interesting ideas and comments I've heard today, the pages of the Destination Stewardship Report are open to you if you have a story to tell. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to be looking for all those as contributions to the book. So I hope to see you in the future in the pages of the book, now under construction, and the Destination Stewardship Report. And once again, many thanks to the board of CREST for this honor.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And again, our humble congratulations, and thank you so much for all your contributions over the 1 or 2 decades that you've been working on this work.
Much appreciated.
Okay, next up, at CREST, we have another big announcement, and hopefully Greg will be joining us here in just a second. Greg Miller, our executive director over the past 3 years, has announced his departure from CREST at the end of this month, returning to his consulting career. Greg joined CREST after Martha retired in 2019, and over the past 3 years, he has just been amazing. He has set CREST on a path to address some of the most pressing threats facing the tourism industry, including climate change, overtourism, inequity, and biodiversity, as well as cultural heritage loss. Perhaps most importantly, he understood that if we really wanted to make a lasting change, we couldn't tackle these challenges alone. And we've heard a lot about this today as well. To really have a true impact, we would need to have and form meaningful, long-lasting partnerships with communities, NGOs, and others in the industry through efforts to really make meaningful change and to continue that change beyond one particular person. And some of these efforts included co-founding the Future of Tourism Coalition and formalizing a partnership between CREST and the National Park Service. So Greg, we're so thankful for your dedication to CREST, and we wish you all the best luck in your next adventure.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. I really appreciate it. And I want to first point out and congratulate Jonathan on this tremendous selection. He has been a guide and a mentor to all of us without question. I've led CREST for 3+ years now, through some rather turbulent times, as we've all seen, through COVID, through economic downturn, you name it. But one of the things that has been so emblematic of everything that we've done is that we've been able to maintain our leadership and perspective as an organization, as a group of practitioners, and as a community. I am shifting gears now and will be returning to my consulting work. And so the next time you see me will be in a different capacity. But I just want to thank all of my present and former board members at CREST, staff. Some of the former staff I've worked with are on this today, Samantha and Kelsey, I think. So hi there, gals. And the future looks bright. And I just have one, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week in a new capacity. There's one thing I want to leave everyone with, though, and that is, and this has been mentioned several times, and I really want to highlight Joanna for really emphasizing this in her good remarks as well, is that destination stewardship, which is something that I've focused on in one form or another my entire career across conservation, outdoor recreation, science, ecology, and now, of course, sustainable tourism. Destination stewardship is not about tourism as an end product or an output. It's about engaging communities and getting that holistic approach to protecting natural and cultural resources. Tourism is an input, and I think that's very important that we all as practitioners continue to work on that. And I was really thrilled by our stellar panel of participants and practitioners, with them really underscoring that. So again, Andrea, thank you. Look forward to seeing everybody next week in a little different capacity. And as I always like to say, ever forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg, and ever forward to us all. And with that, I would just like to again thank Greg for his dedication and his all of the wonderful work that he's done over the last 3+ years. And as ever forward, as we prepare to launch and search for our next executive director in the next few weeks, I am thrilled to announce that our current CREST Director of Development and Partnerships, Wes Espinoza, will be the interim executive director beginning the 1st of next month. And before I turn it over to Wes, I would just like to give a quick thanks to an amazing forum today. So thank you to Alex Collins, our Director of Communications, as well as Wes and the rest of the team. Thank you to Greg, and thank you to all of our moderators and speakers today. This has been an amazing afternoon for me. I'm on East Coast time, and I look forward to continuing the conversations and the partnerships with you all. So with that, Wes, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And first of all, happy World Tourism Day to everybody. I also just want to start off by echoing Greg's sentiments and saying congratulations to Jonathan. Really, Jonathan, you've been such an inspiring leader in this movement. CREST is so lucky to call you a collaborator, a friend. And really, when I think of destination stewardship, the first face, the first person that comes to mind is Jonathan Tourtellot. So congratulations and thank you for all of your contributions. I also want to say a sincere thank you to all of the panelists, the presenters, speakers. There were just so many rich ideas and there was such incredible dialogue today around destination stewardship. And we're so appreciative on the CREST side for everybody's willing engagement and innovation in this. And then finally, I really want to say a heartfelt thank you to Greg Miller. Greg, thank you for your time, your heart, your dedication that you've given to CREST, the positive energy, passion, ideas. You've been an inspiration, a light in dark times, a leader, and an amazing mentor. So on behalf of our entire staff, our board of directors, all of our partners, thank you so much for your commitment. And we certainly will carry forward the incredible impact you left behind on destinations. So everybody, if you haven't met me, my name is Wes Espinosa. I'm really excited to jump into this interim executive director role. It's a position, a platform, and an opportunity that I take very seriously. And I take it seriously because destination stewardship isn't just a concept at CREST. It's an essential component of our work and our model. As we all saw today, destination stewardship is a fabric that can hold all of our work together. Destination stewardship isn't just a definition. It empowers residents and provides equitable economic opportunity. Destination stewardship preserves the heritage, both natural and cultural, that make travel unique. Destination stewardship galvanizes visitors to become a part of the solution related to any destination challenges. And destination stewardship allows us all to work towards positive environmental, social, and economic change while also preserving local identity. So over the next several months, I look forward to working with our brilliant CREST team to strengthen that destination stewardship bridge so that it may be more accessible to all. I want to say thank you to Alex Collins, our Director of Communications and Marketing. She did an incredible job putting this forum together. And then finally, two more things. If you enjoyed today's event and discussion, we welcome further engagement from all of you. Reach out. Please write to us. We, of course, would welcome your support or your partnership in any way. There's a donate link. You can also reach out to us on our website. Just let us know what you're seeing on the ground. We want to hear what's happening in your part of the world, big or small, doesn't matter. We want to make sure that we're all in this together. The more collaboration, the more conversation, the more impact we can have together, the better. And then finally, thank you all for coming out and participating, but we're not done yet. We invite you all to join our virtual networking that we have right now. If you click the link on your left-hand side where it says people, you'll be randomly paired with another participant for 3 minutes of networking. Once you've engaged, you can continue your chat or move around the virtual room to someone else. And finally, thank you to the Intrepid Foundation, our marquee sponsor for the event. This would have been impossible without you. And I said the Intrepid Foundation, I did mean Intrepid Travel. And also thank you to Holbrook Travel, another sponsor of this amazing event. Thank you, everybody. And hopefully we'll see you all in that virtual networking forum. Take care.